Welcome to the Permanent Local Housing Allocation Program webinar, and thank you for watching. My name is Danielle Cummings. I am the Program Manager, and PLHA is one of the programs that my team and I manage. Let's begin with housekeeping. This webinar has been recorded and will be posted to the program webpage for your reference. Questions and answers will be taken during a live Q&A session to be scheduled for a later date. You can also email your inquiries at any time to the PLHA inbox at plha@hcd.ca.gov. I would like to take a moment to introduce you to my team: Jennifer, Kelsey, Marie, Melanie, Stephanie, and Terry. The topics we will be covering today are general program overview, delegation of allocation, eligible activities, threshold requirements, application review, online submission, and what's next. Let's start with general program overview, covering the reasons the program was established, the funds that are available, and the authority under which this program and guidelines and regulations operate. The PLHA program was established to provide financial assistance to local governments. Funding will help cities and counties increase the supply of housing for households at or below 60% of the area median income, commonly referred to as AMI. It will increase assistance to affordable owner-occupied workforce housing, assist persons experiencing or at risk of homelessness, facilitate housing affordability, particularly for lower and moderate income households, promote projects and programs to meet the local government's unmet share of regional housing needs, allocation, ensure geographic equity in the distribution of the funds. HCD is pleased to release this entitlement and not entitlement local government formula component. The amount available is approximately $335 million for the PLHA program. Entitlement and non-entitlement local governments are eligible for an allocation of PLHA funds. The PLHA funds allocated to each entitlement local government is directly proportionate to each entitlement local government's share of the total 2017 CDBG allocation in California. The PLHA funds allocated to each non-entitlement local government is based on the sum of two factors: 50% distributed equally amongst eligible non-entitlement local governments, and 50% allocated proportionately based upon HUD's most recent comprehensive housing affordability strategy data. Please be advised that if you have yet to apply for your 2019 allocation, this will be your final opportunity to do so. This money is collected from your jurisdictions, and we would love to see it go back to your communities to address housing needs. Tell your neighborhood jurisdictions who have not yet applied to reach out to us, as we would love to help them access these funds. We wanted to take a moment to refresh you on the expenditure deadlines as we move closer to hitting the deadline for the expenditure of the 2019 allocation on April 30th, 2024. First-time applicants applying for their 2019 allocation during this application period must expend their 2019 allocation by this date as well. There is no extension based on when you apply. Please keep the expenditure deadline in mind when selecting your activity or activities for your 2019 allocation. Senate Bill 2 established the fund and authorizes the department to allocate 70% of monies collected and deposited in the fund beginning in the calendar year 2019 to local governments for eligible housing and homeless activities. Please note that the competitive PLHA program is unrelated to the PLHA release and has its own NOFA, workshop, presentation, and email address for all inquiries, all of which can be found on the HCD website. And now I'll pass it to Terry.
Hi, I am Terry, and I will start with a review of delegations. So what is a delegation? When a jurisdiction is eligible to receive an allocation, but they do not want to manage the allocation, they can delegate the entire allocation to another eligible local government or housing trust fund who manage and take responsibility for the allocation. The eligible jurisdiction that is the recipient of the formula allocation and the delegate jurisdiction or local housing trust fund must execute a legally binding agreement setting forth their intentions and the responsibilities of each party. As noted above, the delegate is required to develop the PLHA 5-year plan and complete and submit the application on behalf of the jurisdiction who is the original recipient of the formula allocation. Both the recipient of the formula allocation and the delegate jurisdiction must be in compliance with housing element law as stated in PLHA Guidelines, Section 302A, and must have submitted the Housing Element Annual Progress Report by the application submission deadline, as stated in PLHA Guidelines Section 302B. In addition, all required PLHA reports must have been submitted. When an eligible jurisdiction chooses to delegate their entire formula allocation to another jurisdiction or housing trust fund, the 5-year allocation becomes the complete responsibility of the delegate, and the original recipient of the formula allocation is no longer responsible in any way for submitting an application, managing the program, or submitting required PLHA reports. The delegate is responsible for developing the 5-year PLHA plan, submitting the PLHA application in compliance with the NOFA, executing all PLHA documents, administering the formula allocation in compliance with program rules, and submitting all required PLHA reports. The delegation cannot be canceled for the entire 5-year funding period. The current funding period includes the allocations from years 2019 through 2023. This means that if either party wants to cancel their agreement, they must wait until the 2024 formula allocation, which is made available in the 2025 PLHA formula allocation NOFA. The Permanent Local Housing Allocation Program requires that funds be spent on one or more of the 10 eligible activities listed in the guidelines. Listed above are the first 2 eligible activities. Activity 1 is for the pre-development, development, acquisition, rehabilitation, residential live work, rental housing, or preservation of multifamily. Activity 1 is geared towards being affordable to extremely low, very low, low, and/or moderate income households, including necessary operating subsidies. Activity 2 is for the pre-development, development, acquisition, rehabilitation, or preservation of affordable rental and ownership housing, including accessory dwelling units, also known as ADUs. If PLHA funds are to be used for preservation of affordable rental and ownership housing, including ADUs, they must meet the needs of a growing workforce earning up to an AMI of 120% or 150% in high-cost areas. You can check the high-cost areas by county in Appendix B of the NOFA. Keep in mind, when using PLHA funds for ADUs, the renter-tenant would have to income qualify, and the occupancy must be for a term of no less than 30 days with an affordability period of 5 years. The affordability period for rental housing projects is required to be a minimum of 55 years. For both activities 1 and 2, please note, pre-development and/or acquisition must result in the development, rehabilitation, or preservation of housing, as otherwise there is no actual housing outcome of the pre-development or acquisition assistance. The next 3 activities cover the following types of funds that must be provided and made available in order for them to qualify as eligible activities. Eligible activity number 3 allows the use of PLHA funds as matching funds when placed into local or regional housing trust funds. Eligible activity number 4 allows for PLHA funds to be used as matching portions of funds available through the Low and Moderate Income Housing Asset Fund, which is pursuant to Subdivision D of HSC Section 34176. And eligible activity number 5 allows the use of PLHA funds for capitalized reserves provided for services connected to the preservation and creation of new permanent supportive housing. So far, we have covered the first 5 eligible activities. Let's move along to the last 5. Let's look at eligible activity number 6. Through this activity, the PLHA allocation of funds may be used for assisting persons who are experiencing or at risk of homelessness with AMIs not to exceed 30%. This includes, but is not limited to, providing rapid rehousing in conformance with federal rules, rental assistance with a minimum term of 6 months. Rental arrears are not eligible. Street outreach and other supportive case management services that allow people to obtain and retain housing. Operating and capital costs for navigation centers and emergency shelters. And the new construction, rehabilitation, and preservation of permanent and transitional housing. Funds may also be used for the following activities. Eligible activity number 7 allows funds to be used for accessibility modifications in lower income owner-occupied housing. Eligible activity number 8 allows funds to be used for efforts to acquire and rehabilitate foreclosed or vacant homes and apartments. And eligible activity number 9 allows funds to be used for home ownership opportunities, including but not limited to down payment assistance. For eligible activity number 10, which is the last eligible activity I will outline for you today, PLHA funds may be used for fiscal incentives. These incentives must be made by a county to a city within the county to incentivize approval of one or more affordable housing projects or matching funds invested by a county in an affordable housing development project in a city within the county, provided that the city has made an equal or greater investment in the project. Keep in mind that the county fiscal incentives shall be in the form of a grant or low-interest loan to an affordable housing project, and matching funds investment by both the county and the city shall also be in the form of a grant or low-interest deferred loan to the affordable housing project. Now that we have covered all 10 PLHA eligible activities, we should discuss a matter related to eligible activities. Affordable owner-occupied workforce housing, also known as AOWH. Please keep in mind there is a requirement that over the course of the 5-year cycle, 20% of all the money accumulated in the PLHA fund must be expended on affordable owner-occupied workforce housing, AOWH. This is something we are tracking, and if the local governments do not come close to meeting this requirement on their own by selecting AOWH activities, the department may require the local governments use a specific percentage of their annual formula allocations in some future year for AOWH activities to ensure the state's 20% total requirement is met. When AOWH activities are being carried out, the grantee shall be responsible for monitoring AOWH loans to assure the homes remain owner-occupied. I will now pass it over to Stephanie to discuss threshold requirements.
Hello, my name is Stephanie and I will be covering threshold requirements. Threshold requirement A is housing element compliance. Per the guidelines, applicants or any delegating local government must have a housing element that has been adopted by the local government's governing body before the application deadline and subsequently be determined to be substantial compliance with state housing element law. To find the local government's current housing element compliance status, please visit the website listed on the screen above. Threshold requirement B requires that applicants must also submit to HCD the Annual Progress Report, or APR, required by General Code Section 65400. Please note, there will be no document substitutions to the APR. It must be this report. Applicants will certify on the application located on the Formula Allocation Application tab that they have met these two threshold requirements. Threshold requirement C dictates that applications be completed in full at the time of submission, meaning that 1. The application requests an allocation to carry out one or more eligible activity and follows sections 200 and 301 of the guidelines. 2. Be sure to submit the authorization resolution from the government board of the application to avoid disqualification. 3. In the event that the local government proposes allocating funds to another entity, The resolution must certify that the local government's selection process avoided any conflicts of interest and must be accessible to the public. An updated plan adoption resolution has been released on the PLHA website and is also accessible by clicking the link embedded in the PLHA application. This must be complete properly in order to satisfy the resolution requirements set forth in the NOFA. 4. Another piece of information that must accompany the application is a plan which details how allocated funds be used for eligible activities. The plan must describe how the local government will prioritize investments so that the supply of housing for households with incomes at or below 60% of AMI is increased, and the plan must also describe how it is consistent with the programs in the local government's housing element. 5. It is important to note that this plan must be for a term of 5 years, and the plan years will be based on the year in which the funds were eligible by the state, 2019 through 2023. 6. If funds are used for the acquisition, construction, or rehab of for sale housing projects, the grantee will record a deed restriction against the property. This ensures compliance with one of the following requirements if the property is no longer the primary residence of the homeowner. Either A. The PLHA loan and any interest thereon shall be repaid to the local government's PLHA account. The local government shall reduce the repayments consisting with Section 301. Or B. The initial owner and any subsequent owner shall sell the home at an affordable housing cost to qualified lower income or moderate income household. Or C. The homeowner and the local government shall share the equity in the unit pursuant to an equity sharing agreement. The grantee shall reuse the proceeds of the equity sharing agreement consisting with this section. 7. If funds are used for the development of an affordable rental housing development, it must be certified that the local government shall use the funds in the form of a low interest deferred loan to the sponsor of the project. This loan must be evidenced through promissory note secured by a deed of trust. There must also be a regulatory agreement that will restrict occupancy and rents according to the local government approved underwriting of the project for at least 55 years. 8. If applicable, a program income reuse plan will be submitted and reused for accrual funds must be used for eligible activities. You will indicate on the formula allocation application tab that you are attaching the reuse plan and submit this with your application. To ensure that you are meeting the threshold requirements of submitting a complete application, please make sure you're saving your documents correctly for your upload to the portal. We also ask that you provide signatures in blue ink on any executed and image document you are submitting in your application package if you are not using an electronic signature. Let's take a look at some of the issues we saw during our last round of threshold review. Many applicants did not use the resolution template approved by our legal department. This can lead to delays and potentially the need to return to council for a new resolution. Another common mistake in the resolution was applicants using the incorrect allocation amount. You will use the 5-year estimate for your jurisdiction located in Appendix C of the NOFA. Another issue we encountered was the name of authorized representative being included on the resolution. This becomes a problem when the listed authorized senior vacates their position. and a new resolution is required. To avoid this, we advise listing only the title of the authorized senior rather than listing the person's name and title. Remember that you also must include the vote count in your resolution, including yeses, nos, abstains, and absences. Do not leave any of them blank. Please also remember that the plan must cover all 5 years, 2019 through 2023. Again, this is based on the years in which the annual funds are approved, not the years in which they are spent. Plan must appropriately account for 100% of the annual allocation, even if you are splitting your annual allocation among multiple activities or AMIs. If the applicant fails to meet any of these threshold requirements, the PLHA representative will reach out and request the required documentation from the contact listed in the application. Please use an email account that you regularly check and save HCD's email as a contact so we don't get forwarded to your spam folder. With that, I'll pass the presentation over to Kelsey.
Hello, I'm Kelsey, and I will be discussing the PLHA applications. First, please note that the application can be found on the HCD website on the PLHA page at hcd.ca.gov/permanent local housing allocation. New applicants formula allocation application tab. There are 2 separate applications for the PLHA formula program. One for new applicants applying for their allocations for the first time, and another application for returning applicants who have already applied and been awarded. Let's go over the application for new applicants. For new applicants, the PLHA formula allocation application includes several tabs, all of which should be completed. The first tab you will complete is the formula allocation application tab. On this tab, you will select the eligible applicant type, entitlement or non-entitlement from the drop-down list, and then select the name of the local government for whom you are applying. Once you have made these selections, the allocation amounts available by NOFA year will auto-populate along with the allowable 5% admin amounts. Next, you will complete the eligible applicant section where you will enter the name of the jurisdiction applying for the allocation, as well as the contact information for the authorized representative and contact. Next, you will select whether the applicant is acting as a delegate on behalf of another jurisdiction and certifying that all public notice, comment, and hearing requirements were adhered to, and certifying that the resolution, government TIN form, and if applicable, legally binding agreement for the delegation have been uploaded with the application. The next section on the Formula Allocation Application tab is the Eligible Activities section. In this section, you will select all activities you will be doing over the 5-year cycle. As you select the activities on the Formula Allocation page, additional tabs will automatically open on the plan page based on the activities you indicated you will be doing. You will also complete the Threshold Requirement section. Here you will be certifying that you are an eligible applicant who has housing element compliance, submitted an APR for the current or prior year, resolution requirements have been met, and that a reuse plan has been submitted if applicable to the activities chosen. Finally, you will complete the administration and certification sections where you will be agreeing to the department's requirements for the administration of PLHA funds and signing off on the application submission as true and correct. After you have completed the Formula Allocation tab, you will complete the Plan tab. We are requiring that you use the plan template provided in the Plan tab, as doing so will assist us in reviewing your application efficiently. As shown on this slide, you will need to provide a description of how PLHA funds will be used for your selected activities, how you will be prioritizing investments that increase housing supply for households with incomes at or below 60% AMI, and how your plan is consistent with programs set forth in the local government's housing element. Each of these questions should be answered thoughtfully and completely. It is not likely that one-sentence responses will adequately address the question, which means your application will be delayed as we ask you to respond more fully. Next, you will complete the activities detail section for each of your selected activities. You should be providing a detailed account of how funds will be used for each activity and filling in the chart for each activity by selecting the allocation years, sub-activity, percentage of funds allocated by the activity by year, area median income served, RENA if applicable, number of households served over the 5-year period, and the period of affordability if applicable. Please note the period of affordability for rental projects must be 55 years. Additionally, you will provide a description of major steps or actions as well as proposed schedule for the implementation and completion of each activity. If you select activities 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 9, or 10, you will also need to enter the percentage of funds from that activity being allocated for affordable owner-occupied workforce housing. We use this information to make sure we are meeting the AOWH requirement. So this is a required field and will remain red until filled in with a percentage, even if that is 0. Please make sure when completing the plan that the percentage of funds allocated for each year adds up to 100%. Example, if you are doing activities 2, 6, and 9 for 2022, the percentage being allocated for each activity should add up to 100%. New applicants government TIN form. First-time applicants will also be expected to submit a government TIN form. When it comes to the government TIN form, please make sure that the principal government agency name has City of or County of included in the applicant's name. The only exceptions are the jurisdictions that don't have their name filed in that way. The name in this TIN form must also match exactly how the name was listed in the resolution. Common mistakes on the government TIN form. If the applicant would like the check sent to a subdepartment, please include the name and address of the subdepartment in the Remit to address portion of the form. Also, list the subdepartment and the subsidiary departments portion in the middle of the form. But if the checks are not being sent to a subdepartment, please leave this middle portion of the form blank and only include the address of the agency in the Remit to portion. Make sure to complete the fine number and also remember to sign the form before submitting. Electronic signatures are okay. If any issues occur, a PLHA representative will reach out to the applicant to fix the errors found and resubmit the form prior to approval. Returning applicants' Streamline application. Now let's discuss the Streamline application for returning applicants. The Streamlined application is a quick and easy way for returning applicants to apply for subsequent allocations. This is a one-page application and is specifically for applicants who have already applied for and been awarded allocations from the 2020-2021 NOFAs. On the Formula Allocation tab, you will complete the top portion of the application by selecting from the drop-down list which year or years you have received an award, which year or years you are currently applying for, the type of applicant, entitlement or non-entitlement, the name of the jurisdiction's allocation for whom you are applying. Once you have entered the information, the allocation amounts and the 5% allowable admin will auto-populate. Additionally, if you have received your 2021 NOFA funds, you will enter the dollar amount of funds you have committed to ensure you have met the requirement of Guidelines Section 300E, which states, an applicant shall not be eligible to receive a new allocation of the PLHA funds if it has an uncommitted amount of formula PLHA funds greater than the following. 1. 4 times the pending annual allocation if the pending annual allocation is $125,000 or less. 2. 500,000 if the pending annual allocation is greater than $125,000 and less than $500,000. 3. The amount of the pending annual allocation if the pending allocation is $500,000 or more. Next, you will complete the eligible applicant section where you will enter the name of the jurisdiction applying for the allocation, as well as the contact information for the authorized representative and contact. You will also complete the threshold requirements section. Here you will be certifying that you are an eligible applicant who has housing element compliance, submitted an APR for the current or prior year, that the submission of the application was authorized by the applicant's governing board, and certifying that the originally submitted plan has not been altered by a change in activities or 10% of funds, that the applicant meets the requirements of 300E, the PLHA annual report has been submitted, and that a reuse plan has been submitted if applicable to the activities chosen. The authorized representative will then complete the certification section by signing that the application is true and correct. Please note the authorized representative who signs must be the same person or position that was authorized on the original resolution submitted. If the original resolution listed the name and position of the authorized representative and they are no longer in that position, a new resolution must be obtained and a new authorized representative approved. Let's discuss the 300E requirement more fully. Please note that returning applicants will be subject to Guidelines Section 300E in this round. This means that an applicant will not be eligible to receive their 2021 allocation if they have uncommitted PLHA funds greater than 1. 4 times the pending annual allocation if the pending annual allocation is $125,000 or less. 2. 500,000 if the pending annual allocation is greater than $125,000 and less than $500,000. And 3. The amount of the pending annual allocation if the pending annual allocation is $500,000 or more. The 300E requirement will be assessed via a new section on the streamlined application. You will enter the amount of the PLHA funds you have committed. If the commitment amount is insufficient to meet the requirement of 300E based on prior year's awards, the application field will turn red. Returning applicants plan amendment. For existing applicants who wish to make an amendment to their 5-year plan that will result in more than 10% of the funding allocation to change from one activity to another, or a complete change in activities being done, an amendment is required, and the following steps are necessary. 1. Using the amendment template on our webpage, complete the PLHA Formula 5-Year Plan Amendment. You will first need to select the appropriate activities on the Formula Allocation tab, then proceed with completing the 302C4 tab. 2. Publicly notice the new plan and hold a public hearing. 3. Using the resolution template on our website, have the governing body approve and execute acceptance of the new plan. And 4. This amended plan and a new resolution will need to be submitted with your streamlined application. Application Support tab. The Application Support tab is a form to submit via email to each CD for any technical issues you are having within the application. Please note that this tab is strictly for technical issues within the application and is not a required tab to be completed as part of the application process. Please be sure to include all specific information for the location of the error and the level of urgency. Please submit the completed form to appsupport@hcd.ca.gov and CC the PLHA inbox, plha@hcd.ca.gov. Application tips. Applications must meet all eligibility requirements upon submission. So with that in mind, I'd like to give you some tips on application submission. Be sure to start your application early so you have time to reach out for assistance if necessary. Please do not copy and paste into cells. This often results in mistakes and can also disrupt the flow of the document. Complete the tabs in order as the tabs are linked and they often flow to other cells. Applications must be on the department's forms and cannot be altered or modified in any way. Please do not submit your application via Apple products. Our required forms do not translate to the Apple equivalent smoothly. Please confirm the application signatory is an authorized signer per the applicant's resolution. If the resolution states the authorized person or their designee, then that means the authorized person may designate someone else to complete and sign the app. That designation must be submitted with the application. Make sure you are submitting the most recent application version from the PLHA webpage. The tax identification number must match the applicant name. Failure to do this may delay your review. Now I'll hand it over to Marie.
Hello, I'm Marie and I will be covering some important details on submitting your application. Please make sure your application is complete with all relevant exhibits and documentation. Submissions will only be accepted online through the submission portal available on the PLHA website. Applications must be received no later than 4 p.m. on October 31st, 2022. Please note that we are no longer closing the portal for submissions at midnight. It will close at 4 p.m. moving forward, as there is only technical assistance available until 5 p.m. So please do not wait until the last moment to submit your application. We map the applications for tracking purposes, so it's important that you submit your application as an Excel document. Please make sure and hit the Enable Editing button that is at the top of the document when you first start. The PLHA application must be submitted online through our application portal. Please visit the PLHA HCD website at hcd.ca.gov or by clicking the link above when you are ready to submit your PLHA application. If you have problems submitting your application once the portal is open, please contact the PLHA inbox for assistance. One last reminder specific to public disclosure. It is important to note that the information included in your application becomes a public record, which is available for review by the public should it be requested. Upon submission, you are waiving any claim of confidentiality and consenting to the disclosure of all material upon request. Please only provide information specifically requested within the application. Once we receive applications through the portal, we review to ensure that the threshold requirements have been met. We check to see that applicants have submitted a complete application and have provided every required document. Once the applicant passes threshold, they will be approved and we will begin the process of sending the applicant their award letter by email. After this, there will be a departmental review for each standard agreement, and the contracts unit will send a draft pending agreement to the authorized representative and application contact for their review and signature. Once the authorized representative and contacts have executed the standard agreement, 100% of the funds can be advanced immediately. In order to receive the allocation, the applicant will fill out a PLHA request for funds form and submit it to our state grants management team at plhasgm@hcd.ca.gov. Any questions regarding this form should also be sent to that email address. Please note the time frame fluctuates due to multiple programs running at the same time and flowing through the same departments. Be aware that this process can take a few months from application submission. There is an annual report requirement which enables the ongoing tracking of uses and expenditures of any allocated funds. This report is due July 31st each year and should be submitted to the PLHA State Grants Management Team. If this report is not received by the deadline, then the funds will not be awarded or distributed. Any first-time PLHA applicants will not be required to fulfill this, of course, but in the following years, it will be a requirement. So you will see this on your application, but you can leave it blank or put NA if this is your first time applying. If it causes the cell to turn red, please ignore it. Here are links to some resources you may use for this program: the PLHA webpage, Senate Bill 2, California Health and Safety Code, PLHA guidelines, information on housing elements. You can also sign up for HCD updates on our website. You can select multiple programs on which to receive emailed news and updates. This way you won't miss out on anything new. You can also have the option to follow HCD on social media, which is a great way to stay informed on programs and updates. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to working with you.